Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Ask an Agent Anything, where we every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time have a chat. I always like to say Renee and I would be on the phone anyway, just dissecting our businesses, what's going on internally, externally, and we like to bring you guys into the fold and just have larger conversations about what's happening in real estate. My name's Corianne. I am a realtor and a licensed agent. I'm sorry, licensed agent here in Colorado. That is a realtor and an investor. So I like to talk about both sides of the business. And I'm here with the fabulous Renee. How you doing, Renee?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on as your co-host. As we all like to say, we are co-hosting this. And for those of you who do not know me, and you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Renee. I live in California. I do business throughout California. Been a friggin' licensed agent as of July 5th for 19 years. Let's hear it. 19 years I have survived this industry. It was just a couple of days ago. So that's when I got my license, 2005, excuse me. Yeah, oh my God, not even in the 20s, 2005. And what Corianne always says is we would be having this conversation. And why we created Ask an Agent Anything is because we find that the conversation between investors and real estate agents is a little bit like oil and water. And we want to just broaden that horizon and broaden that scope. And Lord knows, I think there's going to be more of this coming down the pike, but we'll have that conversation. And for those of you who don't recognize, you see this, the background is different. The secret is I'm not even on the West Coast right now. I'm in New York City. New York City. So I'm in a friend's house. I'll be here for a little while, so you'll see different backgrounds, but looking at some real estate and having a good time here. Anyway, Mr. Scott Groves, how the heck are you, sir? It's been a minute. It has been a hot minute.
That is a loaded question in our market right now, right? Like, how is any realtor or lender doing? It is real hard to get deals to come together.
Yeah, it is. And, I remember 2007, 8, 9, and about 10, I don't know, a special kind of, maybe I killed somebody in a past life and I don't know how I ended up here because that was also equally challenging. But you know what? When your heart's in the right place and you want to just do right by the business, you'll stick it out and you'll find a way and you find your people. And that's also part of what this show is that we want to bring good people on to have the conversation, to keep this conversation afloat and alive, because it ain't an easy business. I think, right, Scott and Corianne, you'll attest that, especially now with social media and with television, and there's just so much access to information. It's camera ready. They need to have attention. They need to get eyeballs, and they make it look simple, and they put the big commission checks on there. But all the blood, sweat, and tears that it takes to get there, it takes something. And Scott, you've been in this business, I think, almost as long as me. We've done business together on the retail side of things. And we certainly wanted to have you on the show just to talk all things like money. So let's get into it. Tell the audience, who the heck are you? You're welcome to say how you know me. I didn't really give a whole lot of introduction, but I like for people to give their own introduction.
I'm sure I cold called you at some point when I was the in-house lender for Keller Williams. I'm like, let's go have coffee and talk about doing deals together. Got out of the Army in 2000 before all hell broke loose and had no idea what I was going to do. Go to work at a bank, right? That sounds cool. Got into loans, rode that wave all the way up at Washington Mutual until Washington Mutual crashed in 2008. I think I made like $18,000 over 2 years in 2008, 2009, and then just started to rebuild the business. So I've been a mortgage lender, commonly referred to as loan officer, broker, whatever. I do home loans, and we do mostly residential stuff, do a little bit of commercial, some 1 to 4 units, things like that, but been doing it for 25 years. And then about 8 years ago was really having some success, grew that into a coaching program. That's allowed me to invest in a couple tech platforms that support the mortgage industry. So, I'm still walking a mile in those shoes of like putting together deals and talking to clients and talking to realtors every day. But I also get kind of some cool like macro insight from what's going on because, for example, the CRM that I invested in, we've got tens of thousands of clients in there and loan officers, manipulating data and keeping in touch with people. And then this other company I invested in called Home IQ does all the post-closing follow-up, right? So I get to see like what clients are buying and selling, and are people holding their properties longer? Are they investing in commercial? Are they buying second homes? Are they buying rental properties? So I love doing shows like this because it's the only time I get to talk about like the macro of what's going on in the real estate and mortgage space.
I mean, Corianne, I know you got questions. Let's go.
Oh my gosh, do I ever?
Yeah.
Well, let's start with the fact that right now I'm just experiencing one of those FHA loan loopholes. We're supposed to close on Friday. We're not closing on Friday. We're extending to next week based off of a couple little tiny things that need to get done. One of which is I will be painting a door.
There you go.
I'm going out and painting a door to make sure that there's no peeling paint and we can actually close. So will you kind of run us through what are the like top 3 to 5 different kinds of loans you're writing most often? And I also want to clarify for the audience, you're in California, in Southern California?
Correct. So I am in Los Angeles, but as far as the state of California is concerned, I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, 181 days a year. I'm actually coming from from our house here in Nevada. So I spend about half our time in California and half our time in Nevada. But yeah, it's all over the board. And part of this is due to the fact that I born and raised in California, and Renee knows in certain areas that we service, you will literally go from condo to castle in 9 blocks, right? So an area that her and I are very familiar with, Los Feliz, California, you will have south of the boulevard 10 years ago, let's say, condos where there's first-time buyers who need down payment assist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're just scraping together enough money to get an FHA loan. And then literally 9 blocks away is, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's old compound where they took 3 houses, joined them together, and the thing sold for $11 million a decade ago when they separated. So, when people are like, oh, well, what's the interest rate? It's like, oh, okay, well, let me just get 37 pieces of data, and then I'll let you know what interest rate you can get, right? And so we're doing a lot of conventional lending, but we're doing, for the first time in a long time, I've got clients, because if the conventional loans are where they were a couple of years ago at 2, 3, 4%, it's very hard to do something outside of the box. The delta is just too big. But now that conventional loans, especially if you're putting, not so much money down or your credit's a little challenged, is at 7 or 8%. Now all of a sudden doing a bank statement loan at 9 or 10% doesn't look absurd. And so for the first time in 25 years, we're actually doing more kind of outside of the box lending where clients coming to me, maybe they work in entertainment or they're self-employed or they have their own business. And I'm like, hey, Scott, I'm kind of looking at to qualify for a home loan, I'm going to have to pay the IRS $70,000 to get the best terms, best rates. Should I just send you 12 months of bank statements? You'll give me a 10% interest rate and we'll call it a day. So for the first time in forever, we're having those kind of conversations about bank statement loans and DSCR, which simply means debt service coverage ratio, for those investors out there that want to buy a lot of property quickly, don't want to show property or don't want to show lease agreements and taxes and all that kind of stuff. We're just seeing way more outside of the box lending. And it's not because these people are less credit qualified or they're putting a lower down payment or they're more likely to default. It's really just an ease of transaction thing. So long answer to your short question, by the way.
That's so good.
No, I loved that because it feels like that's, what's kind of changing culturally in the United States in general is that you have people who are like, no, I haven't worked for anybody for years. And how does that even line up with moving towards, purchasing your first house? So I'm just glad to hear those things exist.
Yeah, I'm very sorry you have to paint the FHA door. That is a lot of frustration. So I feel you on that.
We've all done it at least once. I've not painted a door, but I may or may not have semi-greased a verbal palm at least once in my life because I'm like, can we just close the damn thing? Nobody's seeing it mold from 1975 that's been on the wall that's dried up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and I gotta stand up real quick for my lender friends, and I'll share this little document here. I don't know if you can see this little hub thing. It's there's 84 people that are associated with the real estate transaction, and the lender's just the hub, right? So the realtor or the client or whatever, they never call the lender to say, oh, hey, Scott, by the way, did you get the insurance binder from the insurance agent who the client picked? Because we know if you don't send out, the insurance binder, if the agent doesn't do their job, then you can't do your job. So I just want to call and check in with the, with the insurance piece. It's no. Hey, lender, where's our loan docs? Are we closing yet? It's well, I'd really love to close. I'd really love to close early so everybody can get paid. But here's the other 97 people that we're trying to coordinate with in order to make it happen. So, like anything else, it's all communication. But I do feel like the lender gets pooped on a little too often for stuff that's outside of their control. So I just had to stand up for my fellow loan officers there for a moment to show that little graph.
I may or may not have been the one calling, the pain in the ass calling, like, is this thing going to close? I may or may not have been that girl.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I can count on one hand, 3 fingers, how many deals we have put under contract in 25 years where like there was a legit issue where we couldn't close the loan. I'm talking about like thousands of loans that we've closed. And one of them was fraud. The consumer was lying to us. So like 2 deals in 25 years that we couldn't close. The deal is always going to close. If you have like a seasoned loan officer that knows what's going on, they will find a way to close the deal. Might be some slightly different terms, but like just work with a seasoned person, which is great because that's kind of all who's left right now. And the deal will close. There might just be some headaches.
Amen to that. Mm-hmm. Corianne, do you have another quick question on this topic, or I've got another couple things I want to throw out there?
Well, I do want you to speak to what you just said on the only ones left are the good ones. What's happening in the loan industry that makes you say that?
Yeah. So at the height of COVID 3 years ago, when interest rates were super low, everybody and their brother was printing money because, how hard is it to call up a homeowner and be like, hey, you want to drop your payments $500? We'll refinance you because the rate's 3%. So at the height of that, there was about 325,000 loan officers in the country licensed doing business. As of the most recent stats that came out 30 days ago, there's about 85,000 loan officers left who are closing a deal at least every 90 days. And, the commission on a loan is significantly smaller than the general commissions on real estate. So if you're a loan officer who's only closed 1 deal in the last 90 days, you're basically dead man walking. You just don't know it yet. So let's say, from 300,000 plus producing loan officers down to about the best projections are about 65 to 70,000 producing loan officers. That means if you're a realtor out there, there's about a 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 chance that your go-to realtor is either pretending to be a loan officer still, or sorry, if you're a realtor, your go-to loan officer is just pretending to be a loan officer and they're doing other jobs on the side, hoping that rates go back down and they can get a second bite of the apple. Or they've just announced, hey, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go sell solar gold chains at a kiosk in the mall, or awkwardly become a realtor, which seems even harder to me. So yeah, check in on your lender friends, see if they're doing okay. Because a lot of them aren't.
Wow. Let's just have a moment.
Tip. Okay.
Yeah.
Pour out my drink for the 200,000 loan officers that are.
You might have some vodka with some orange juice in there. Oh my God.
Right. Wow. Well, it's happening to agents too. I mean, we're seeing so many of them exit the industry or, be pretending right now to kind of continue until they're seeing more listings or more closings. I'm curious, is that the best question to ask a lender to find out, are they one of the top tiers? Is like, how many closings have you had in the last 60 days?
Yeah, it's a loaded question, right? Like at the height of the COVID market, we were probably closing 20 deals a month. In a normalized market, I'll share this stat with you. I'm like a CRM nerd geek, right? And so I know right now we have 87 million and some change in fully pre-approved buyers. These are people that have filled out the application, sent us the paperwork, gone through the consult. They know what their payment's going to be, locked and loaded. So $87 million of people that are theoretically out there shopping. Now, some of them have given up because the payment for the properties that they want to live in are too high, whatever. Some percentage of them have given up. But in a normalized market, let's go back like pre-2019. So 2010 to 2019, with an $85 million pre-approved pipeline, I, as a lender, would be closing about $8 or $9 million a month in transactions. Right now, it's a struggle to get over 2.5 million in closed deals a month. So you got to think, lack of inventory, a little bit of like, they're just gun shy to pull the trigger because the payment is higher because of these higher interest rates, maybe a little bit of insecurity in the job market, a little bit of insecurity due to inflation. And all of a sudden, like $85+ million worth of clients that should be out actively making offers. On any given month, we're getting 2.5 to 3 million of those people under contract. One of them will fall out. We'll close between $2 and $2.5 million worth of deals. Now, that's still enough for myself and my partner Lee to make a living. but kind of like just barely, right? And the thing is, because so many people are still getting pre-approved, I got to get back to Renee when she has a question. I got to send out pre-approval letters. We're still doing the same amount of work, probably more work, just for about 1/4 the income. And so that's kind of what the numbers are looking like. And I also run a coaching program for realtors and loan officers. And so even the realtors that I'm talking to, they're saying the same thing. They're like, man, we're having to go on twice as many listing appointments, talk to 3 times as many buyers, send our preferred lender, which is hopefully me, 5 times as many clients just to get a deal under contract. It's just tough out there because of market forces. And one of the things I like about you guys, I was going back and watching some of your podcasts in preparation for this. I like the fact that you guys are talking honestly about the fact that the market is still doing good, right? Like, unless you have a high-rise condo specifically in Austin, which has seen a bit of a correction, property values everywhere across the nation are up because there's lack of inventory and there's still a ton of motivated buyers. But most realtors who aren't the two of you and most lenders who aren't me, they have a hard time conveying to their audience or on social media or to their clients that like, hey, the market is doing well. I'm just kind of like sucking because there's not as many deals and transactions coming together. But I feel like lenders and realtors complaining about the market forces that are affecting our paycheck are having consumers have second thoughts on the overall market of real estate. And it's like, no. It's still a good time to buy a home if you can afford it. Property values are actually going up. There's nothing on the horizon that's going to make property values go down. It's just like, it's tough out there for realtors and lenders to bring a deal together to get paid because there's not a lot of deals out there. And I appreciate that the two of you are actually talking about that of like, no, you should be looking at buying investment properties. Property values are projected to go up over the next 5 years. Like, just don't buy into the hype. So anyway, that's my rant. I don't even know if I answered your question.
You did. I love that. And it's parlayed into something else, but did it answer, Corianne? I want to make sure you got that cross.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, clearly Scott is just chock full of good information, and I'm not just saying that because he's giving us some kudos. But guys, if you're listening to this, make sure that you line up some questions in the comments and give us a nice like because Scott was so kind to give us some time today. What you got, Renee?
Well, that parlay, Scott. So I know obviously you're a mortgage broker, a mortgage lender. It's a little bit of semantics right there. So you're not someone who is a hard money lender. So whomever ends up watching this over time, because it's going to live on YouTube, but I just want to keep it like kind of contextualized, right? So we're talking about investors and agents. So as far as real estate agents traditionally, they're going to understand essentially, what you do, maybe not who you are as Scott, but who you are as your title in this business. So you're a mortgage broker, you're going to broker out deals, and it's essentially going to be a traditional deal. What I'd like to talk about, because one of the things I really like about you, Scott, isn't just so much that I've done deals with you, right? And you've saved me on occasion. It's been a minute because I kind of pivoted my career, right? So you are an investor yourself. So what I'd like to hear, if you can speak to it, either personally, like kind of personally, and then professionally, maybe it's really just the DSCR loans. I don't know technically what you're doing right now. Are you incorporating hard money lending? What do you do with that? Think of it like a listening audience. Like I want you to answer the question, but think of it like a listening audience where if you're an agent and you're like, well, I am the one complaining, right? But hey, I want to do something about it. And I landed on this show and these two gals are talking to this mortgage broker. Then what do they need to hear to maybe ask the right questions if they're not going to call us up to try to pivot? Because I'll tell you, Scott, I pivoted. I don't honestly, in full transparency, I don't do that much traditional real estate anymore. I primarily work with investors who are all cash or hard money. So if we can kind of parlay that conversation, please let us know what you're up to.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's kind of a dividing line between what can a lender or a bank or a mortgage broker, whatever, provide versus like what's traditionally called hard money is just private money, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say Renee came to me with a deal and she's like, hey man, we have this 4-unit, but one of the units is destroyed and needs to be renovated. One of the units, we've got a squatter, and the other 2 units, the tenants are lovely, but we got to raise their rent. Like the property doesn't cash flow. And I'd be like, look, Renee, there is no lender who's going to touch this deal, right? Or maybe there was fire damage or something, which is why your investor wants to buy it because they know they can fix it up and get a great deal. No investor, whether that's the most conservative, Bank of America, all the way down to like some of these hedge funds that do more speculative lending, no one's going to touch that. And so when people say hard money, what they really just mean is private money, right? So Scott's got 500 grand sitting in my checking account. I'm like, all right, Renee, your investor puts down 30%. I'll spot the other $400,000 or $500,000. I want a 12% rate of return, and I want my money back in 6 months. So show me the exit strategy for your investor, fixing up the house, getting a traditional loan, and either selling it or paying me back, right, when he refinances, either way. So these are kind of the two paths that have diverged in the market over the last couple of years. And hard money or private money is simply that. Like, you just got to know, this is going to sound funny, but I got a guy, Russian Robert, in Los Angeles, where like if you need to put together a sketchy deal, he'll put together all the investors and they'll make sure it's all legal and it's all on title and it's all documented with lawyers properly. But you're going to pay 12, 13, 14, 15% with a couple points up front. So it's a huge cost to carry that money, right? And of course, they want to insulate their risk. So the investor is going to have some money in the deal. Now, on the other side, if you're like, hey, the property looks pretty good, right? It's livable. My client has 20, 25% down, but they haven't filed their taxes. Or what we're seeing a lot in LA is they've got tons of cash. They want to make investments, but they work in the entertainment industry. So a year and a half, they didn't work for COVID. They finally came back, and then there was the writer's strike and whatever. So like 2.5 or 3 out of the last 4 years, they haven't worked, right? So we can't show any income. Well, then we can start to go to stuff like the DSCR or some kind of a cash flow loan. And DSCR, again, debt service coverage ratio, just means we're going to look at the property. We're going to say, okay, this is a duplex. Each side of the duplex, we can get $2,500 a month in rent. That's $5,000. What mortgage, taxes, and insurance will the $5,000 support? Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you got to put down 27.5% to make sure that if the lender had to repossess the property, the rents would at least cover the mortgage, taxes, and insurance. And so we're doing a lot of that kind of stuff. And so, one of the reasons why I think people don't become investors is they've got the capital, right? Maybe they even have like the handyman in their family, or they had somebody that worked for a property management company, or they're just like kind of enamored by real estate. And they don't take the leap because they don't feel like they can get the finances in order. Like, it doesn't cost anything to talk to Renee, to talk to Corianne, to talk to myself about like, hey man, is there an avenue here to invest? And like the number of people that I've seen over the last decade grow like real generational wealth by taking the risk and saying, oh, you know what? I'd really like a second home in Palm Springs, Lake Arrowhead, Lake of the Ozarks, whatever. Is there a way to set up this financing and then, I'll rent it on Airbnb a couple weeks out of the month and then I'll use it a little bit. And then they just kind of rinse and repeat. And they're like, oh, this is easier than I thought. Right now, Airbnb is getting harder and there's fewer travelers, but it's just like, you have to have the conversations and you have to think about it because there's more ways than you think to get money. And I always do like this little like Venn diagram, right? So it's like, if you just have the little 3-circle Venn diagram.
Oh, yeah.
One of them is assets, one of them is good credit, and one of them is provable income. So you can show your tax returns and your pay stubs, and you can show you make a bunch of money. The other one is like, do you have a decent credit score over 700? And the other one is like, do you have money in the bank and the down payment? If you've got 2 of the 3 of those, you can put a deal together. You got provable income and great credit. All right, we are not worried so much about the down payment or the assets. You got great assets and great income. We don't care if your credit score is trash. You got great assets and great credit score. We'll find a way to put the deal together, even if you can't prove your income. So it's like, if you've got 2 of the 3, assets, credit, and then provable income, we can find a way to put you in a deal or buy an investment property.
And that's so imperative to especially like the agent listener. I don't know if I'm not discounting the investor listener, but investors tend to be more savvy and want to like put a deal together, be in that deal maker mentality. One of the things I'm going to assert that I'm starting to listen to is I always say, don't get mad, get creative. And I swear that is the kind of market that we're stepping into. For instance, right, all the stuff with the National Association of Realtors. Well, boohoo, it's not 2%, 2.5%, 3%, whatever's going to be offered in the MLS anymore as a laydown. Guess what? It's a skills-based business. And anymore, if you don't want to deal with that dirty fixers, because Lord knows, Scott, we live in La La Land and people just want to sell pretty houses. They don't really want to be bothered by a dirty fixer. But the truth is that is a lot of where people's equity is going to be and forced appreciation in these larger markets. So all this to say, when you are talking to a client and you're saying, hey, client, hey, past client, maybe you can't necessarily buy a second home that you can just step into, but that we got to go back to our grandparents' mentality to say, roll up your sleeves, do some hard work, and not everybody's entitled to a home that you get to just walk into that is pretty. And so there's more of that opportunity that isn't necessarily showcase ready, that you may just want to dip into your mindset as a real estate agent and say, hey, client, what are you up to? Have you had the consideration to build financial wealth? If you don't want to be the kind of real estate agent that is full-time going to work with investors, but that how can you be of service and bring value to the clients that you already have who are sitting on the sidelines saying, I can't buy that pretty house in Palm Springs, that mid-century modern, or in Big Bear, the A-frame house that I can just step into for Christmas. Maybe that's not life right now. Maybe you need to roll up your sleeves and do the work. So I just want people to listen in between what Scott's saying, that there is opportunity everywhere. It just may not be the opportunity that you've been used to, because we've been on a 12-year trajectory since the last down market. It's been pretty damn easy if you've gotten your license since that last down market, which has been a little over a decade. So Scott, you said 25 years, right? I've been 19. And plus I was in the game prior to that this is what it's going to take. So I love opportunities like this. I just want the listening audience at large to know that stop trying to create your business off of hope, because we don't know if the interest rates are going to go down, and stop waiting until they do. Create business and create a solution for the people that you already have in your book of business.
I was rolling my eyes 2 years ago when a bunch of loan officers that had no business being in the business, they're now out of the business, and they were just hoping things would turn around and rates would drop again. And they're like, oh, date the rate, marry the house, just get it 2-1 buy down. Like, we'll refinance you in 6 months when rates go down. It's like, I've seen this movie before. Like, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, right? And so, not to get political, and I stole that quote from like someone, Warren Buffett or whatnot, not to get political, but like any economist worth their salt would look around and be like, we're probably in a recession, right? Like inflation, job report numbers, like it's not a great economy. And trust me, I think both parties suck. I'm like a crazy libertarian. So this is not a political statement at all, but we're probably in a recession, right? And if we're not going to call it a recession, then the Federal Reserve doesn't need to do the things to get us out of recession, which would mean drop the interest rates. So there's a bunch of loan officers and rate prognosticators sitting around being like, well, I'm angry. Rates are supposed to be lower now. I'm like, no. The market can stay irrational way longer than you can stay solvent. So you got to get your ass back to work, and you have to guest on podcasts, and you have to reconnect with old realtors who haven't worked with for a while, who are getting creative and staying in the game. And can I tell you like a dirty little secret from the mortgage side, from evil version of Scott Groves? The loan officers that are still around are kind of laughing at you realtors and this NAR settlement, because for 15 years, loan officers have had to just keep adding more value in order to retain clients, right? Because every client, the day they go under contract, they go shop 15 different lenders. They're like, oh, Scott, I know you've been working with me for a year and helped me through like how to file my taxes to qualify. And you did all the things and you sent pre-approval letters at Saturday night at 10 o'clock, but I got to do what's best for my family. And B of A is like 0.25% lower and it's going to save me $28 a month. So thanks for all the work. So like now that realtors have to do the same thing, and you guys kind of have to sing for your lunch and like negotiate your commission and show your value, lenders are kind of sitting on the sideline laughing and be like, yeah, guess what we've been doing the last 15 years, right? And so you want to make like a full 3.5, 6% commission, whatever. You just got to add more value. Renee, there's a realtor that you and I know. They're creating a deal out of thin air because they followed up with a past client who they found out was in some financial challenges. So they got him in touch with me. We got him this. We basically been playing the role of financial consultant for 90 days to get the client to realize they need to sell their house in Eagle Rock that has $500,000 in equity, move back to wherever they're from, where they can buy a house all cash. And like this realtor just created $1 million listing out of thin air, and they're going to get like their full 3.5% as the listing agent, because they've added more value. They've really stepped in as that financial advisor, right? And I was like proud to be a piece of that because we're going to put this person in a better spot. But like they couldn't have just like door knocked and been like, hey, we'll sell your house for $1 million, give us 3.5%. Like that's just not going to happen anymore. Yeah. So, you want more money, you got to add more value, which is like why we got to do things like this, right? Like educational podcasts to help teach people what they need to know about the markets. Anyway, I'm on my soapbox. I'm sorry.
No, amen, brother. Amen. I mean, I tell you, when I heard the NAR thing secretly, here's Renee's like little dark side, right? I was like, I did this. I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing is I keep going back to it's a skills-based business. I mean, Scott, how much money have we paid? I have the GNP of a small nation on how much coaching and time, right? I can't get back my own human minutes. So there's all that I've spent, right, in my life I'm not asking for any, negative, like I'm not being negative about it. I'm just simply saying that from day one that I was even in real estate, I was like, oh my God, I need a business coach or I want a business coach. And then from there it just came, started to parlay. So I have spent thousands of dollars on embettering myself. Totally. And, the thing, if I had to point a finger about the DRE is it's too easy to get in and it's too easy to get out. And you're lucky that your mom cares about you for 6 months until you make a career change and all your leads are going to go away and your past clients will forget about you. I mean, that is the damn truth. I'm not even trying to be mean about it. People, we're in the attention economy. They may have been like, oh, Renee was cool. Like I remember her, but like, what is she up to? I mean, this is where we're at. So let's have a reality check about the industry at large. And don't get sad about it. Maybe for 5 minutes. It's been hard. I had a challenging day. I'll be honest with you. Like this is a no joke business. I was not in a great space this morning because I was like, this is effing hard. Like mentally, right? Like it's just like, how many no's can you hear? How many, doors are going to close? But we just keep moving. And I think people like the three of us on the screen here is we have something to bring. We have something to offer and you just keep moving forward because you know that you can kind of be that cog in the wheel, just like you were, Scott, for this deal. Like when you're there, you're there. So my soapbox is, to those of us that are out there that are still in it, that want to be in the game, stay in the game. It's like 2 feet from gold, right? You got to take a breath and stay in the game. Or if you don't want to step up to what it's really going to take, Scott, I don't know, man, you might agree with me on this. I don't know that there are any more second chances. I mean, the last down market was really, really tough mentally because people were throwing themselves at me, crying and cash for keys and my house is getting taken away from me and all the things. And then the market went like that. I don't know how many 2 more times now because the genie's out of the bottle with Zillow and, people have access to information. If you do not step up as an agent in this game or a broker in this game, I don't know. If you don't have it, I think bow out because I don't know that there's enough room to make it selling to your friends anymore. Thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. And it's like, by the way, many industries suffer from this. So I'm not just picking on realtors or loan officers, but the number of sales professionals who don't run their business like a business, cracks me up, right? I did a guest spot on a coaching call for a bunch of realtors, which was cool because the guy who had me come on and do the guest spot, he's like, hey, none of these people are in your target market, so you can talk to them in any manner you want. Like you're not going to get mortgage business from them, so do whatever you want. So this one guy was complaining about like, well, experience should matter. And I see all these realtors that don't know what they're doing and they're getting business from podcasts and Instagram and TikTok. And, why would you pick your realtor from TikTok and blah, blah. I was like, okay. I'm like, I get it, man. I want everything to go backwards to a more professional time period, right? I want to go back to pre-cell phone when I could work at Washington Mutual 9 to 5, do loans. No realtor even had my phone number, right? I wish we could do that. We can't, okay? So let's think about this. Why are they getting deals on TikTok, right? Well, it's because millennials and whatever's below them, Gen Z, that's going to make up 50% of the buying populace over the next 10 years, right? So we're really just talking about attention. And he's like, yeah, but I've been doing this for 30. And he just wanted to push back. And so finally, I punched him in the face. I'm like, all right, mother effer. I'm like, when's the last time you called every single person you've sold a home to in the last 30 years and said, hey, Renee, it's Bill. It's been a while, blah, 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 blah. I was just thinking, when we sold you this house 10 years ago, your kids were in junior high. I bet they're getting pretty close to buying a home. Whether they're buying here or you need me to refer them to Renee because they moved out to LA to follow their dream as a gymnastics, I don't know, America's Next problem.
Gymnastics actor, yeah.
I'd love to be here as, you know, a trusted referral for them. He's like, well, I never really made that call. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Who do you think that kid's going to trust more when it's time to buy a house? The person they found on TikTok or the person whose mom is giving them the down payment, says, oh, you got to use my guy, Bill. He's like, well, I don't know. TikTok's pretty powerful. I'm like, you think TikTok's more powerful than a mom giving their kid 50 grand and saying, no, you got to use my guy, Bill? So until you get off your ass and start working more, like if you were making those annual calls and checking in with those clients from the past 30 years, I'd be like, all right, yeah, you're screwed. TikTok won, right? But it's like the fact that you're not doing the work and you're complaining about social media taking your clients, you're just a lazy bitch. Like, excuse my language, but like get to work, do something. Make some calls, door knock, do something, right? I know investor. Okay, I'll tell you this story real quick. I helped a friend of mine. We're in a dad's group together. He had a influx of money that he was not expecting. And he's like, I want to own low stress, either a storage unit or a trailer, mobile home park, right? Because it's like, I don't want to deal with real tenants. I just want to like collect my rent and have a property manager and do other things. He called something like 325 mobile home parks. He and his realtor called 325 mobile home park owners, storage units before they put a deal together. They put this deal together about 4 years ago, and he was just calling me on the side for some financial advice. So he bought the place 4 years ago. He just sold it for a $740,000 profit. And so he goes, you know what? Each one of those 13-second phone calls where I got a no made me $2,114 because eventually I got a yes. And 4 or 5 years later, I profited almost $750,000 tax-free. So each no that he got made him $2,000. And now he's fired up to go buy like his next 3 projects because he's like, I don't care. I'll take 1,000 no's because I know every time I get a no, I'm just making $500, $1,000, $2,000 because eventually somebody's going to say, yes, we're going to put the deal together and I'm going to get rich. And I was like, yeah, you just got to work harder. It's crazy.
And to that, because I want to call on myself, you know, I had a challenging day, right? I'm a human being. We all have them. And thank you for putting that into financial context, because I kind of forgot that important component. I was feeling sorry for myself in a weird way, you know, and I remember, I know what you're saying, right? So I'm going to go back and re-presence myself, right, to that, if that's the incentive, right? Because you're just like, how many no's can I hear? Or how many this, how many, all the things. And it's just par for the course, you know, it's par for the course of what we've chosen, and it's first world problems. So remember, whomever's listening to this, me, Scott, Corianne, that we've chosen this. And there are people in a 9-to-5, because Corianne and I are more now in the investor conversation. A lot of it is specific to the wholesaler lane, although I don't necessarily consider myself just a wholesaler, but the group that we're in primarily does wholesaling. And a lot of these people are trying to parlay from a 9-to-5 into wholesaling, or basically financial freedom through, you know, real estate ownership. And they're like dying on the vine. They can't do this full time. You know, it's a lot. Mm-hmm. So to the point of what you're saying is, it actually requires work. And if you talk to anybody who was a real estate agent in like the 70s and 80s, prior to the cell phones, they were hustle shuffling. They were driving from here to there. There was no Zoom. There was no nothing. You know, maybe it seemed easier because not everybody had access to information, but there was a quality problem on the other side, right? They had to go in the office to pick up. It's always something. So all I can say in this is, it was the last time we're probably going to see in some time in the last 12 years. If you got your real estate license in the last 12 years, you've gotten the game in about the last 12-ish years, it's over. You got to get to work and work on your skills, because you'll be a better person. And what are skills? Communication skills and listening skills, active listening skills and verbal communication skills, primarily through emotional intelligence. You can also look at Chris Voss is a good one to look at, things like that. It's not just real estate, you know, look outside of the box on how to listen. Right?
I'm literally going through this book right now. This is The Full Fee Agent, written by Steve Scholl and Chris Voss.
Right, Steve Scholl. And I coach
the real estate version. Yeah, it's the real estate version of Never Split the Difference. This is the best book ever. I'm going through it with a group of loan officers and realtors and just tabbing out all the good points. Like, if you're a real estate agent and you haven't read this, like, shame on you.
Yeah. Amen.
I'm feeling shame. I'm going to go read it.
Yeah. Steve's awesome. He's been a real estate coach in LA. He really coaches like the top, probably 100 agents in the country, primarily out of Manhattan and LA, right? The two bigger markets, maybe some Miami. So yeah, I've been in those rooms on Zooms, and believe me, guys, anybody who's selling, you know, $40 million homes, $10 million homes, whatever, if that's your aspiration, please go for it. We are all having the same issue. Okay. So whether or not you're, you know, if you're retail and it's a lot right now. Back to, let's talk about money. Corianne, any quick questions before I have something else to say, but I want to include you in on this.
Too many quick questions. You go your direction. I also want to make sure that the audience can chime in.
Yeah. Do we have a question or no?
So, no, not right now. Everybody's just soaking in that information. They wanted to know what book that was, and it was The Full Fee Agent. Is the full name?
Fee Agent, yeah, by Chris Voss and Steve Scholl. Awesome book. Must read.
And not that this is about me, right? But how that all started is it was actually a real estate agent who brought Never Split the Difference to Steve. Remember, I coach with Steve in my retail side. I still do right now. And when Steve got wind of what Chris Voss was up to, he completely changed his whole business model. He had been a real estate agent coach for retail, let's call it, for 20 years at that point. Yeah. And he went, oh my God, the unique selling proposition is emotional intelligence. That is from a quote from Steve Scholl. He changes a complete entire business model. And that's all we talk about is emotional intelligence, a la Chris Voss, on the other coaching calls that I have right now, still to this day. So I essentially been coaching with Chris Voss for the last 4 years, and those two got together and wrote the book. So this isn't about me per se. I'm just sharing behind the scenes because I was there from ground zero when Steve said, I'm changing my entire business model. I'm not doing Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry, you know, scripts and all the questions that you
better listing appointment. If I only had a better listing appointment, right?
All that, you know, so emotional intelligence is the unique selling proposition, and it'll change your life in all areas of your communication, not just real estate. But get that book first and study it. It is not a book to be read.
You know, there's a lesson in there, Renee, regardless of whether it's about you, Chris, coaching.
Yeah.
But think about Steve, you know, ex-Super Bowl, you know, champion. Like, just when you meet him, you think he hates you because he's just like, rah, rah, rah. And here's a guy who coached in a manner wildly successful, top agents in the country, 20 years into his coaching career, says, you know what? I have the humility to realize there's a better methodology out there. I'm literally going to light a fire to 20, 25 years of work and expertise. I'm going to take a chance that my multi-million-dollar business, I'm going to tell all my coaching clients, hey, I was wrong for the last 25 years. Here's the new, better way to do things. And the humility, like, I have so much more. I used to coach with Steve as well. I have so much respect for Steve for like being a man and doing that, and like being a professional and doing that. A lot of realtors and loan officers have to go through the same thing, right? I'm going through this now as well. Like, what used to work doesn't work. Some of the stuff that used to work works great, right? But it's like, we got to have the humility to change and evolve and be like, oh yeah, this thing over here doesn't work. Now I got to kind of switch over to this thing, right? Or I've got to be willing to try new things for a long enough time horizon that I can find out if it actually works. You know, I was talking to a realtor today who I won't use by name because you know him. And he's like kind of whining to me about the market and how hard it is and how hot LA is right now and blah, 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 blah. And I'm not doing enough business and the market sucks and buyers are liars and I can't put together any wholesale deals. And then we got disconnected. And I called him back and he's like, oh, hey, sorry, man. I was getting out of the pool, switching from my speaker Bluetooth to my AirPods. And I'm like, it's Tuesday at 11:30 and you're like in the pool, probably having a few drinks. That's cool if that's what you want to do, but you can't simultaneously be that guy and then be complaining about the lack of deal flow. It's one or the other. Hey, you want some time off? You're on sabbatical. You need to like hang out at 11:30 in the pool, catch some rays and drink a beer. Awesome. I'm all for that. You want to be frustrated at the market? I'm all for that. You can't be both. It's illegal. You can't.
Right. And just a contrast between Steve and the guy you brought up earlier, who's like, TikTok. It's like, it took so much more to be humble and be like, hey, I'm shifting my business. This works better. Let me change all of these things than it is to put up a TikTok video.
Totally.
Like, that's not that hard.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Everybody already knows I have a double chin, right? Everybody already knows I'm going bald. Like, putting up video content is pretty easy. Like it's me. Like and if somebody's not going to work with me because I recently got a tattoo or whatever, then fine. That's whatever. Let the chips. But people are like, oh, no, I don't feel comfortable on video. Yeah, no kidding. Nobody feels comfortable on video until you do it enough times. Then you feel comfortable. I'm sure you didn't feel comfortable sitting down at a listing appointment the first time, but you had to do it to make money. So go find the other stuff that's going to help you make money.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I find that very often there's an entrepreneurial mindset that you have to have when you're coming into real estate, no matter what position you're taking in that. But it's this idea that it's only going to take 6 months and then I'll be poolside. Like, just, give me 6 months and then everything should be flowing for me and happy. And I'm going to be drinking at 11 a.m. when it's really not that, because of the changes and shifts that are always happening in this industry. You got to stay on top of it. And I'm sure, I've been in the industry for 5 years. I'm only seeing like a little bit of it in comparison to your guys's, time in the industry to see the ups and downs and the cycles. What would you say is like kind of the cycle we're in right now? And what are you seeing as like some of the best loans that are working for you in your market?
Yeah, I would say, for speaking to the professionals, the realtors, the wholesalers trying to put deals together, just anybody whose life revolves around deal flow, we are in like the databasing cycle, meaning that like everybody needs to go into a database. Everybody needs to be marketed to. Everybody you need to try to build some relationship with. And I know right now it's painful because like I have shiny object syndrome. Like I want to go read these books and I want to jump in the pool with my kids and I want to go smoke a cigar and I want to try this new thing and I want to play on social media. But I just know that like the realtors we're connecting with today, the potential clients we're putting in our database now, we're probably not going to make revenue off of that for 6 months, a year, 4 years. I don't know. My kids do jujitsu. I do jujitsu. So there's like about 20 families that, the dads do the 6 a.m. class together. Then our daughters do 4 p.m. class. Then our sons do 5 p.m. I mean, I spend more time with these guys than my wife. And I'm more intimate with them because jujitsu is very on top of each other. It's very weird. And so I always joke that I'm like, hey man, like the jujitsu gym is split into 2 pieces, not by belt level. It's like who owns a house and who doesn't own a house. And if you don't own a house right now, like Vegas is one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. They're putting up a huge movie studio here. There's a train coming from LA to here. They're bringing in a baseball team. They're bringing in a basketball team. Like if you don't buy a house now and bite the bullet and figure it out on your budget, you're just not going to do it. But some people aren't ready, right? So all those people are going into my database. I'm educating them. I know there's 15 or 20 deals at the gym that are going to come together over the next 2 or 3 years when they're like, oh shit, Scott was right. I need to buy a house before it's completely unaffordable for me to own a house in Vegas, just like it is in LA. And those, we're just constantly cultivating those deals. So I would say to like the professionals in the room, your database, like growing your database should be your best friend. That's number one. And then exactly to Renee's point, we are in the never say no stage. Like if you've got a motivated person who wants to bring together a deal, whether that's the buyer, the seller, the realtor, the wholesaler, if you've got a motivated party, you can find a way to put the deal together. You just got to think outside of the box. So we're in like the database creativity stage. Some might call that the survival stage, but the seeds we plant today, they will be harvested at some point.
Mm-hmm. And to that, I like what you just said too, because I want people to listen in between. Like what I'm hearing is, okay, if you're on the sidelines and you're like, oh man, I don't want to door knock, or I think open houses are dead, or whatever some of the traditional stuff is. And I mean, there's the difference between strategically door knocking and then just door knocking. When I hear door knocking, I say door knock on all the dirty houses. I'm like the dirty house whisperer, but that's my wheelhouse. So do what you will with door knocking. But what I really heard you say is back to don't get mad, get creative. That's my motto. How about this? How about call up property managers and start picking their brain and being of service, but realistically also listening for who's going to be selling what when. And someone like you, Scott, who maybe isn't like a private money or hard money lender, it's like, it's not just, oh, forget those people. Like how, and I'm going to have this conversation with you more, you know, off record too, because I just got this idea is how can I support you? You know, how can I support you with deals that maybe you would traditionally throw away? Like who's out there doing creative financing, who's maybe doing a wholesale deal. Now you specifically are a little bit different because you're also an investor yourself, but maybe for those other, you know, 100,000, whatever, 200,000, you know, brokers that are on their way out the door, mortgage brokers that are on their way out the door, maybe, you know, we can support them by saying, what are you throwing away? Like be the cleaner, be the real estate agent that's the cleaner, you know, and start thinking creatively. Who's buying businesses? You don't have to know all this. You just have to be the matchmaker. That's what I call myself. I'm a matchmaker. I know enough to be dangerous to have the conversation. And then I put those two conversationalists together and I say, listen, throw your girl a bone. Pay me a finder's fee. That's it. And on down the road you go. So how can somebody who's an agent and or an investor either, you know, because they're going to say, well, that's great. You ladies had him on, but I don't need a mortgage broker. That's a great show, but now I'm bothered by it. No. Right. What can you leave the listening audience with that would support you and support them, even if they don't technically need your services?
They have to ask, right? So, okay, I've been doing this for 25 years. I work about 48 hours or 48 weeks out of the year, times 5 days a week, times I try to make 13 sales calls a day. So 6,000 times 13. So I've talked to, now, of course, I've talked to a bunch of these people repeat times. I've talked 78,000 times over the last 25 years to realtors, right? And we'll just use my example and then I'll extrapolate this out to you. So 78,000 times I've been on stage, I've hosted lunch and learns, I've hosted realtor events, and anybody who's seen any of my social media knows I'm an open book. I've been married, I've been divorced, I've been remarried, I've had kids. I found out I had another kid, right? Who's now old enough to go buy his own house. So let's just call it 78,000 interactions over the last 25 years. I have had two agents, Keely Myers and Kirk Giroux, asking me for my own personal business. Like 78,000 times I've talked to realtors about business, about stuff. Again, I'm an open book. These realtors know I'm doing the big things, right? Starting a business, getting divorced, getting married, having kids, all of these triggers that should be like, Scott's going to buy or sell a house. And by the way, I have extreme ADD. I have never, since I was 4 years old, lived in a house longer than 2 years. My parents were habitual renters. We moved all the time. Then I was in the Army moving all the time. Then when I got out, I have never owned a house more than 2 years. So I have bought and sold 14, 15, 16 properties over the last 25 years. Two realtors in my entire life has asked for my personal business. And it got so obnoxious to the point I just had my wife get licensed and she's never done a transaction outside of like family. But it's like, well, I'll just give her the commission because I've seen a deal put together. So like, there's a ton of realtors out there that are like, there's just not enough deals in business and I don't know what to do. It's like, you have to ask. Like if you haven't had a conversation with your dental hygienist about buying a house, oh, cool, you own a house. Do you want to really clean teeth the rest of your life? Have you thought about buying an investment property? Right? Like I talked to a realtor one time. She's like, you know, here's an interesting thought. I don't like picking up dog poop. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Nobody likes picking up dog poop. She's like, I pay a girl $100 a week to come pick up all the dog poop around my yard because she had like 4 large dogs. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. She's like, I bet you anybody who's wealthy enough to pay for somebody to come pick up their dog poop, probably also wealthy enough to be a homeowner or buy investment property or whatnot. I'm like, yeah, instead of looking down on her, why don't you go have a great relationship with your dog pooper upper? And then you can get that person to refer you all the other rich people in the network who pay $100 a week to have somebody pick up their dog poop. And she, sure enough, has gotten a deal out of that. She's in Sacramento. She called me like 6 months after I talked to her at this keynote. So it's like, here, anybody watching this, just ask, just have the conversation, remind people what you do, like ask for the business, plant the seeds. Because if we're in that databasing, seed planting, cultivation cycle of the market, you have to do those things. Or in 2 years, Renee and Corianne are going to eat your lunch because they did have all these conversations and the deals are going to go to them because they were doing the podcast and they were doing the social media and they were having the conversations with the investors. And you're going to be like, Renee has such an easy life. She gets all these investor deals and they just close all cash. It's so unfair. She's making so much money. It's like, Yeah, because she spent 2 years planting the seeds, you dummy. So I would just, not to call your audience dummies, but we just got to go plant the seeds and have the conversation.
Or be
I'm a
human about
CRM
it.
nerd too.
Totally. You got to be.
Yeah, I'm curious because I've actually recently realized there's a whole hole of about 1,500 people that sit in my cell phone that haven't made it to my CRM. So, I'm thinking like, how do I creatively touch base with these people? Many of which I literally have no idea how I met or who they are. I'm like, oh, haven't
Call
texted
them.
this person in forever. I was going to ask, what's the best way to just like reconnect? Just call them.
I call people all the time. I just did it today. Hey, Bryce, man, weird conversation. This is Scott Groves. Did I catch you at a bad time? Straight from Chris Voss's book.
Yeah, right. It's not a bad time to talk.
They're like, no, Scott Groves, who? I'm like, hey, man, somehow in the last 3 years, we got introduced about a mortgage conversation. I don't know if you bought. I don't know who your realtor was, but I've got your name in my CRM and email. I've seen we've texted a few times back and forth. Dude, can you just tell me where you're at in your home ownership journey so I can note my CRM and stop bothering you? Like, did you buy? Did you give up? Do I need to be monitoring your rate for a refinance? Do you need to get pre-approved because you're going to buy this year? And most of those conversations are like, I don't need you. And it's like, all right, cool. Take that guy out of the CRM, put him as do not disturb. But frequently they start conversation like, oh yeah, Scott, I'm really sorry. My realtor gave me 3 cards. I went with this other person. The experience was mediocre. Tell me more about a refinance. Cool. Let me put you in the database with a trigger on what interest rate we're looking for. And, at some point in the next 2 years, because all markets are cyclical, at some point in the next 2 years, we'll refinance that guy and I'll steal that guy. And then the loan officer who did the purchase deal, who didn't stay in touch, will be like, these clients are just, they're not loyal. And it's like, well, yeah, they're not loyal because you didn't stay in touch. You didn't add any additional value. So I would just say, call them all. No shame, no judgment. Call and be like, hey, man, this is Corianne, right? I'm a realtor. I'm not quite sure why you're in my phone, but I'm just trying to clean up my database. How do we know each other? And just have a conversation, see what happens.
I've had that. Something else I wanted to just add-ish on that is, what's been interesting for me is my business took a real turn because Scott, a lot of people, the great flight out of California happened.
Yes.
And if you are in a state or in a town where that might be happening, I know California is like the United States scapegoat, right? We're kind of the first for everything. Well, stay tuned. That might happen to your town, right? And so what are you going to do? And there's one thing that I can attest because I actually didn't have too much of a downtime during COVID because everybody was freaking leaving. But what I did take a hard look at is, damn, the reality is I don't think that I'm really going to get much business from those people. They are now in Arizona, in Texas, in Florida, whatever the red state they moved to, right? So at this point, I said, you know what? That what I really appreciated was the investor, because there's one thing that I would leave this conversation with, that even if you're a real estate agent, then you don't want to necessarily double down on working with an investor. Maybe either get with someone like a Corianne and myself, because we're easy. I've JV'd with plenty of traditional real estate agents. I'm doing it right now with an agent out of Beverly Hills. She doesn't want to do what I'm doing. She's not interested in being the investor-friendly agent, but she likes me. She likes the hustle. She likes what's going on. She likes that I'm a woman, right? Because it's kind of a guy's lane, right? The investor lane for the most part. And honestly, I just JV the commission with her. That's cool. That's one chick I'm doing a deal with. And she brings all kinds of off-market opportunities that are in that echelon. So all this to say, if that is happening to your business, or you're seeing a shift in your business, one thing that I can attest to is that the investors don't really care. In fact, when it's bad, when the news is bad, that's when the investors come out of the woodwork. So I say right now is now the time to double down on it. Don't get mad, get creative.
Yeah. I'm going to write that down. I'm telling my coaching group tomorrow, don't get mad, get creative. I'm stealing this from you. So thank you.
Please do. That's not even from anyone. That was a download from the universe. So I didn't read it in a book anywhere, but really that's the name of the game, because I really think you got to step out. And I say this with so much love in my heart, because we live in a capitalist society. There's room for everyone. But if you're not willing to work, it's been kind of a free ride for damn near like 20 some odd years. I think what the last down recession was like 89, 90, somewhere in there. And then it was an upswing. And then, we had 2007, 8, 9, 10. And there's a lot of people you and I both know in this town that stepped out And I don't know, maybe they had a spouse, maybe they had enough passive income, maybe they just didn't care, maybe they went to work at a grocery store, I don't know. But then they stepped back in, and guess what? They were a lot of luxury agents. So be careful, you guys. Stop watching all these television shows, because a lot of those people don't necessarily do a lot of deals. They're at the whim of the market.
Yeah.
So you need to have an undertone. That's fine if you want to sell a $40 million house, but guess what? Get smart about the, where your lunch comes from and who's going to feed you, because the people that buy the expensive homes, the wealthy ones, are not dumb people, and they end up buying in the less expensive areas to cash flow and supplement their home in fill in the blank, Miami, Beverly Hills, Palm Springs, whatever. So get smart, call up your rich friends too and say, what are you guys buying? You guys are not just buying another, $4 million house in the Hamptons. They might be buying a $300,000 house in San Bernardino that cash flows.
100%.
Yeah. Corianne, take us out. No
Fastest freaking hour that ever. No questions to quite answer. And I want to be respectful of Scott's time, but we have to come back. Like, please come back anytime you want, because I could talk about each one of these loans individually, probably for an hour, and CRMs and how to approach people, because this is a business you have to be doing that in. So to take us out, Scott, what do you got going on in your life? How can our audience connect with you and bring you value? What do you need? Kind of give us the download on our way out.
Yeah, I put my link tree in the chat if you want to share that wherever. It's just Scott L. Groves, anywhere you want to find me. So the L, depending on what you thought of the last hour, is for I love him or he's a loser. I don't know. Scott L. Groves. I love talking about this stuff. I can't help but talk about the macro stuff. It's so interesting to me. And I would just say, if you're in any realm of the financial professional, right? Realtor, loan officer, insurance agent, financial professional, just like keep expenses low, right? Keep going, keep building relationships. That's my big thing, Renee, is like keep building relationships, and the universe will take care of things. So that's why I was excited to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Scott, I appreciate it, brother.
I just dropped it in the chat so everybody can have access to it.
Amazing.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to say goodbye for now. Scott, we will absolutely have you back, and I'm going to connect with you offline myself. You've got so many things that are just planting seeds. So everybody, appreciate you.
Bye.
Be well.
We'll see you next Tuesday, y'all. Bye.
Bye.